meet the best builders in the entire world.
It's really kind of like the pinnacle of, I guess, young guys showing off.
So it's a recording.
Essentially, it's the best of the best that show up here to showcase your work amongst other people that are in the industry, and you all have the same passion. And we're showcasing it all in one spot.
We'll go all the way till we have 10 minutes left, and then start looking for a good pause break. All right.
All right, good morning, everybody. My name is Jason Glass. I'm the director of e-power sports for Turntide Technologies. We're an axial flux motor manufacturer based out of the UK. Have a pretty solid team here in the US. And today we're going to be discussing a little bit about axial flux technology, its advantages, its versatility, and how we see that developing in the sports industry as we continue on. So got a great group of guys up here. I'll let them kind of walk through and introduce themselves.
Hi everyone, my name is Kurtis Horner. I'm the Vice President of Engineering for Meyers Manx. And so in that, I've been leading the technical development for everything on an all-new electric Meyers Manx dune buggy. So kind of trying to realize the same classic vision of the Meyers Manx in the modern day. Thanks a lot.
Hello, my name is Gregg. I'm with Current Electric Vehicles, and I've been doing this about 5 years, and I really like the fact that we're seeing it growing like wildfire. And at Current, what we want to do is convert as many different kinds of vehicles as possible. So it's coming together really nice.
My name is Deeley. Pretty much the same story as Snow. I started about the same time in about the same place, converting cars, and we do a bit of land speed racing on the side. We worked on the fastest electric vehicle in the world, 353 mile an hour, and then I ride a land speed motorcycle.
My name is Jacob Hawksworth. I'm with Sierra Car, and we build single seat, open wheel, performance kind of recreational vehicles for many different types of driving disciplines. We're building them fully electric now for track use and other racing applications. So good to be here.
Awesome, thanks guys for joining us. What we'll do is we'll start down here with Jake actually and kind of get your opinion on how you think axial flux technology is going to be affecting and influencing commercial vehicles and really the power sports industry as a whole.
Yeah, really good question. I think, this is kind of from our perspective at Sierra Car, which is, going EV for us was about, how do we have the right type of performance, but it also needs to be cost effective. It also needs to integrate into like existing driveline. It has to be practical, right? Like there's been a lot of EV technology that's not flexible enough, usable enough to be practical. What we found with axial flux is that, the RPM range, the power density, the packaging, the way it integrates into the vehicle is exactly what we need. And I think when you have that experience, you kind of realize like this is something that can be integrated into many different types of applications, and that's pretty powerful.
Yeah, awesome. So I think, when you think about the axial flux, the ability to stack it, it gives you a lot of packaging options, gives you a lot of trim level options. And how do you think that's going to affect Meyers Manx from your position, Kurtis?
Yeah, I mean, the cool thing about the package that we have is, I guess the challenge about the package that we have is that it's a very small vehicle, and so trying to get good power density in that small package was a tough problem that we had. And so the evolution we've had with axial flux has enabled us to have really unique configurations where we could have multiple different drivetrain configurations, rear-wheel drive, all-wheel drive, even front-wheel drive if we wanted. Also, we could stack the motor to even get out more higher power density with not that big of a change in terms of total package space. Of course, we have to drive that with the battery and everything else to make sure that it actually all works. But it's been actually a really cool way to help us develop our vehicle. And the fact that it's so tight and compact means that we can fit it in an area where it might not change the fundamental architecture of multiple different vehicle types. I know that it's worked well for us, and I think that that's probably true for many different vehicles, just because you have so much power density for a certain area, and the simplicity of integration with traditional drivetrain packaging. it's more center line of the car. You can set up for that more easily and stuff like that. And I think that's where the advantage lies.
Yeah, I think it's one of the important things about when we look at e-power sports, even the Sierra motor car, you look at the lightweight design of that car. From a radial flux side, we're typically about 60% of the weight of a radial flux. And we can do the space-saving side of things too. So when you go to all-wheel drive and you go to rear-wheel drive, we've got the redundancy there and the packaging options. So what do you guys think, how that's going to affect the power sport side from your perspective?
Well, our main thing is land speed racing as far as the motorsports. And, you know, one thing that you guys both touched on was, you know, the compact nature of a radial axial flux motor. That's great, but we don't care. I want the torque. And the increased torque is really what's going to, you know, they say, you know, horsepower sells cars, torque moves cars. So the axial flux motor gives you a significant increase in the torque, you know, that it outputs. So that's going to get us down the track. And it's going to, once we get that car moving 200, 300 miles an hour, it's going to keep it moving. So, and I think the more people that start looking at these options in motorsports, they're going to realize that, yeah, you can go fast, but you're going to go faster with electric.
I think the packaging, the car that we have so much space that we're not hurting for anything like that. But for a motorcycle or a smaller car, if you can save 100 pounds on your motor and you can make it half the size, now you can carry more batteries. Batteries are the bottleneck right now. So the motor being smaller lets you increase performance in other ways beyond just the motor.
Yeah, and I think like even with the Meyers Manx, or you think of a Volkswagen or a Porsche, those platforms, when we're trying to get the most amount of power we can in a very small package, axial flux kind of lends itself to that. So, like even some of the projects you guys have worked on, what do you see as the advantage of the size of the axial flux when we have to go dimensionally larger, not thicker, but dimensionally larger? How does that affect the way you guys tend to build cars?
Well, it's definitely going to affect the packaging, because what we do is each car is an individual build. And with as thin as that motor is, and you got a higher output, well, we can use less space, right? Maneuver the motor around to where you can get a better weight distribution on the car. So this is just an example. We have a build in the shop right now, and we're going to use a Turntide axial flux motor. And it allows us to move the motor to align the axles directly to the drive angle. So that helps us big time, right? Packaging is big.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, okay, excellent. So you guys think about like a lot of your history. So you've given your history in the automotive industry. How have you seen the progression from like radial flux to axial flux, and how do you think it's going to affect maybe hybrid technology and that sort of thing?
Yeah, it's a good question. So if you think back, in my history, I worked in the Acura NSX, and it was a 3-motor hybrid. And the motor was a radial flux that was stacked basically between the motor and the transmission. As a big transaxle configuration. And I think how that affects it ultimately is you get a lot more power per area with this axial flux configuration, and the compactness and the flatness of the package allows you to stack multiple things, similar to how the Acura NSX had the radial flux in between the transmission and the motor. We could do more power in those types of configurations. So I could see configurations where you could almost fit the axial flex motor from Turntide in the package for the NSX. So you could dream up all kinds of unique configurations where you stack things in series and create hybrids that maybe weren't possible before in kind of unique ways. Of course, you have to do the vehicle controls to make sure it all works, but I think from a package perspective, that's a unique element of what we can do now.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we can continue to do is think packaging front and rear wheel drive, but also being able to do motors back to back for torque vectoring and high performance, cars like that. So have you guys seen like the torque vectoring options that you guys have used in the past, how axial flux plays into the higher performance side of the industry?
Yeah, so we have a project that's independent for four motor, kind of each wheel being driven by a different axial flux, a Turntide motor, and what we've seen is, again, I think like electric motors are such a cool technology, but when you're in the world of like permanent magnet and other things where you're dealing with high RPM or, the packaging, the physical size. Like, you run into all these roadblocks. What we've seen with axial flux is that there are way fewer roadblocks, to run into where you integrate into the vehicle platform, into the driveline, and that just opens up lots of different options. I mean, even we're talking about hybrid. If you've ever done a packaging exercise or tried to match the power band of, a 24,000 RPM electric motor to, an engine system, like it's very, very difficult. Axial flux takes all of those pain points away. And I think that just means more creativity, more projects, more different, variations. And I think, Kurtis really nailed it, which is, how do we do more configurations, with lower costs, faster to market? For a lot of these companies or builders, like the timeline is very important. The cost is very important, right? So we've seen huge advantages in axial flux that way.
Yeah, so you think about like the motorcycle you're going to be, we're building with you guys. So, you look at land speed record, which is an interesting division of motorsports in and of itself. What you're building for your motorcycle, you look at axial flux and how we can line that up in your motorcycle. Tell us a little bit about your goals with your motorcycle this year and kind of the speed target and what we're going to be building for.
So the record right now in that class stands at 246, and that was done with a permanent magnet motor out of a bus. So old 2009 technology. The motor itself.
Who set that record?
That'd be me. That'd be in August. So we'll be stepping on our own toes a bit, but I don't mind that. That motor alone weighs 200 pounds, and it revs out 4,500 RPM, and it has no gearbox. So there's a huge number of constraints there. You couldn't add a gearbox just because of the weight. So you got a gear for top end. You get the whole idea. It's the RPM range that an axial flux motor can do, along with the packaging, the weight. It's just better in every regard. There's no downside to something like that.
Yeah, so I think it's going to be exciting. We do a 400 in that bike, and it'll do 6,000 RPM, and weighs about 40 kilograms. So we'll be huge weight savings and that sort of thing. So super exciting. And then we have Snow is going to be driving the Clown Shoe, which will be going to be a great car. So tell us a little bit about that package and the goal of that program.
Well, the Clown Shoe started life as a Honda 600 Coupe. So the whole car was maybe, 10 feet long. Now it's 19 and a half feet long. So the thing that I feel like I'm going to get from, the axial flux setup is the torque vectoring, the safety. So if we get that car moving and the back wheels start spinning, and if I see the back of the car pass me, that's all bad. So what it will allow us to do is we can monitor each wheel speed and make sure, and I can monitor it and make sure that, okay, the wheels aren't spinning, I'm getting traction, and keep the car going straight down. So my biggest, takeaway from that is going to be the safety feature. Doing 200 and 300 miles an hour, safety is a huge concern for us. Don't you notice wheel spin when you're on the bike?
Oh yeah, so at 240 mile an hour, we were getting about 20 mile an hour wheel slip. So the back wheel's doing 20 mile an hour more than you. Now, we only had one rear wheel to worry about. If you had two rear wheels moving at different speeds than each other.
at 200 and 300 miles an hour, it's an issue.
Yeah, so it's exciting to see. And really, I think the more interesting conversation is, how do you guys think the development of axial flux and hybrid technology? I'm a race guy, I'm an off-road race guy, looking forward to running the Sierra Motor Car, King of Hammers, and the Desert Challenge this year, and kind of seeing how EVs can affect desert racing, and with the ultimate goal of building a hybrid trophy truck. So it's how do you guys think that we're going to be able to move the industry forward? And what do you guys think some of the new ideas would be around how to apply axial flux to the automotive industry?
I would say one thing that is a key enabler is just having readily accessible, functionally safe vehicle controls. That's probably one of the biggest barriers for just a aftermarket builder to have, is my guess. I'm speaking maybe from my experience. I'm not sure your guys' experience, but knowing the vehicle controls are safe and that they have all the fail-safes as an OEM, I think is actually one of the biggest challenges that we have had up until this point. And I think if we if there's a platform that exists and that it already kind of is baked in for a full recipe on having functionally safe controls, that's, I think, going to really enable just the regular person, if they wanted to purchase a kit and actually build a car that, you know, has all the advantages that we've talked about.
Well, I want to piggyback on that. And first thing I want to say is, I think we've gotten away from, you know, the 60s. What wins on Sunday sells on Monday, right? And what are we selling? Well, we want to sell the motors. And I think to your point, the average DIYer, you have to have a kit. They don't want to go and try to do all this engineering when you don't have that background. So if you could go in and say, here's a check, give me a kit. I put it in the car, boom, I have an electric toy, race car, daily driver. And I think making those kits and making it accessible to the average American, that's where we're going to get to them.
I think to that point as well, it's been exciting watching this stuff trickle down from the highest levels of motorsport. I mean, I think the Formula E cars were axial flux years ago. We didn't know what it was. It's just this magic thing that we know is better. So to see it trickle down into the hands of mere mortals that can actually go out and buy one and use it in their projects is something that's really exciting for us.
Yeah, I think I would just kind of pile on to the commonality of standardizing a platform. A controls architecture is really important. I think if you're like at Sierra, our goal is you know, lots of different models, applications, fully electric, you know, rear-wheel drive, all-wheel drive for track use, track racing, hybrid for off-road racing. And when you do that, if you have to change motor technologies, you have to change controls architecture, you have to change, you know, and these are not, you know, easy things to do in a safe, you know, a safe way, right? So I think the ability to standardize on axial flux throughout, you know, different powertrain configurations, driveline integrations, the controls being common, you know, just in the end, the consumer, the user, the racer, is really who benefits. And we know this technology is going to take us to a whole new level of performance, and we're seeing that everywhere. The Sierra car is a car that you can buy right now. You can go see it over there. It does 0 to 60 sub 2.5 seconds, and you know, it's a $50,000 to $60,000 car. You know, that's what electrification brings. Is like a whole new access to performance. So it's pretty incredible that way. I think that's what where the future is.
Yeah, one of the things we've worked really, really hard on, and especially you look at a lot of the cars here at SEMA, and you think about, you know, I'm an old school hot rod guy. I'm, you know, like a 32 T-bucket kind of guy, and you know, I love going fast. I love going off road too. And one of the things we've really worked hard to do is give a lot of options. So one of the things, especially with the Sierra, we can change the gear ratio in our softly integrated EDU that allows you to do an off-road car, do a street car, do a drift car. So I think having multiple platforms and multiple options, we talked about it with Meyers Manx, and even with what you guys are building, having some versatility and moving away from the one-size-fits-all kind of idea, and I think that's what axial flux brings to the marketplace. So, what do you guys think from a retrofit side of the house, right? From what you guys do at Current, you look at the Revolta and what you guys have built there, and you think about a lot of the packages. What do you guys think some of the futures are for retrofitting? What do you see in that area?
I think the possibilities are unlimited, because this is one of the things that I have a 1962 Chevy. I love my car, and I probably had 10 motors in that car, right? But what we can do is take that 1965 ESO Revolta, and what was literally destined for a scrapyard, now you make it electric. It's reliable. It doesn't leak. You know, for some people it doesn't smell. And now you put that car on the road for another 60 years, right? A reliable transportation that looks good. You keep all the nostalgia, the style, the look that drew you to the car in the first place, and you bring it into the modern era. So the retrofit, that's not going to slow down. If anything, I think it's picking up speed.
Yeah, I think it's, you know, one of my favorite cars is the square body pickup, which you drive in the hillbilly, right? And from a drag truck, it's an amazing opportunity, but be able to do a kit for a square body Ford or a square body Chevrolet. And last night at dinner, we were talking about even doing Ford Rangers and S10 pickups, Like there's a group of us. I guess maybe I'm showing my age a little bit. You know, I want to drive an old square body Ford Ranger, and it's like I can take that truck. I don't have to worry about the motor. I don't have to worry about the transmission. Now I've got a nice e-axle on the back and a 40 kilowatt hour pack. I can drive around for 200 miles and enjoy it all week long. So what have you guys seen from maybe the systems integration side or from a market side that you think will be affected by that?
Well, I think this is one of those things where, I'm maybe not as old as you are, but I heard they used to have this delivery system. It was called a what was it called? Carburetor? Yeah, they used to have carburetors, and they were, temperamental, and you had, so if you had a guy who knew how to deal with carburetors, great. And then they moved to fuel injection. I ain't put that crap on my car, right? The old school guys, right? And then there you had the LS swap. And the LS swap now is like, I think the electric stuff is getting to that level where I don't want that. It doesn't make any noise. I want the rumble. Well, you're trading one set of auditory experiences for another. And from experience, I take off in a car, in my Chevy, and the wheels are spinning. I don't know until either I look at the tach or the car starts getting sideways. In the Hillbilly Deluxe, I take off and I hear when the tires start spinning. So now I have a quicker reaction time to either adjust or whatever. So the point is, the controls that you have with electric are going to be different, in some cases superior to what we had with, ICE. But, if you're open-minded to it and you're willing to, okay, well, maybe I trade a little bit of this noise for a whole lot more speed. Well, then you're going to see that the capability and the controls in a 1980 Chevy truck are going to be far superior to what they were in 1980. And I think that's going to be the benefit of the control systems, for the new EV conversions that are coming.
And I think, especially the off-road stuff, you've probably experienced it with the Sierra cars. You can hear what kind of surface you're on. If you're getting into softer sand, you can hear the tires in the dirt. It's a really useful thing to be able to hear off-road.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's very different, and there's lots of benefits. I think the other thing from this applies to motorsports and many other areas. I think the performance aftermarket in general, we've kind of, as of lately, we've had a little bit of an inverted pyramid, where a lot of the innovation is happening at very high levels of motorsport, and they're unaccessible, right, to a lot of things. And so I think what EV brings is an ability for the grassroots to become much stronger. And we've seen that. We've seen people buy Sierra cars that are getting into motorsports for the first time. They're experiencing motorsports for the first time. It's not as intimidating in many different ways. The tuning, the calibration, the maintenance of EV, that whole experience is different. So it's opening the door to many things. We have people that are doing autocross, for example, in a Sierra car that, are placing as amateurs in like the top 3, the top 5, in their first races, right? So it's really cool for me to see, I think, the aftermarket, and whether that's conversions or performance builds done by builders. We just need more. We need more creativity. We need more of the grassroots getting involved, and I'm excited to see that go into motorsport too.
Yeah, I think it's kind of one of those. I think about the Meyers Manx, right? You just want to go out on a Sunday drive. If you've never driven a Meyers Manx, you know how loud a remastered car can really be when you're yelling at your spouse or whoever's sitting next to you trying to have a conversation. So I think from just a cruiser car kind of aspect, it adds an interesting mix of how the cars can perform, the audio side of it, and that sort of thing. So I think it's going to be an exciting future for EVs. We've got about 5 minutes left. We want to open it up for anybody that might have a question about Turntide, about the axial flux, or the application of that technology.